The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
You're listening to the Alldus podcast, ServiceNow series. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is David Shake. David is the Director of ServiceNow PMO at Crossfuze. David, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, JP. Very excited to be here.
We're delighted to have you. So we got lots to cover, but as we do with all of our guests, let's start with yourself, please. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of your background in technology, from where you got started early on, some of the roles you've held along the way, and most importantly, what's led you to where you are today as the Director of ServiceNow PMO for Crossfuze?
So I started my career with Xerox, which was a fantastic foundation for myself. I actually started as an intern on the sales side of the house and had an opportunity to very quickly support some large enterprise customers out of the Chicago area. And it was just a summer internship. I didn't really know anything about Xerox. It's actually pretty funny because as recognizable as the name brand is, in my notes, when I was just applying everywhere, trying to get my first job, right, I put it with a Z in my notes, and it was like, That's how little I knew about Xerox. But, had an opportunity to go through a very structured internship program that I very quickly found myself adding value to some of their current accounts in Chicago. And that snowballed very quickly because I had the opportunity. I was a junior going into my senior year, and Xerox actually offered me a position to work full time my junior year and then finish up school at night classes. And I was just very fortunate to kind of not have to worry about what I was going to do when I graduated my whole senior year. So I started with a sales team there and worked that for a little bit, but very quickly had the opportunity to go and get some closer interaction with a customer that I had worked with previously on more of a delivery account management style role. And it was a temporary role that I worked for about 3 months, where I was an account general manager. And I had a foot both in sales and delivery. But at the end of that assignment, had to make a choice. Do you want to go back to your sales gig, or you're really good at this delivery and, customer success thing? Do you want to join our delivery organization? And I never looked back. I made the choice to go into delivery. That was 13 years ago, and I've been doing account operations management in some form or another ever since. I worked at Xerox in that kind of capacity in different roles for about 7 years, and then eventually needed to get to an industry that was growing. As much as I loved, working for such an iconic brand, I was really ready to see, growth quarter over quarter instead of just hanging on to what we have. And ServiceNow was a natural next step. There's so many connections between great minds and people that, were part of Xerox that are now ServiceNow, Bill McDermott being the biggest name, from that connection. I had the opportunity to go to Linium, and I didn't know anything about ServiceNow, really. I was, a user of ServiceNow from a lot of our tickets with our accounts went through ITSM in some capacity, but I knew nothing about implementing ServiceNow. And then had the opportunity to be a service delivery manager with my service delivery background at a company called Linium. Absolutely loved that. It was such a different style and different atmosphere when, everything that you're doing is new and, there's budget behind, customers that you're working with and they have ideas for growth. It was the polar opposite of what I had at Xerox. And then from the service delivery management side, naturally got a chance to move into project management with the engagement manager side of things. And went through an acquisition with Cognizant, which I was, definitely new to the acquisition side, but not new to being in a large company like Cognizant, with Xerox being a big size. Did that for a couple of years and then wanted to go back to a smaller partner where I could ultimately have a little bit more creativity. If you have an idea, you don't have to go through 20 layers of red tape, that sort of thing. Made the decision to go to Crossfuze because it felt the most like Linium. All the people that I met with in the interview process were just fantastic. And I've been at Crossfuze now for the last 3 years and loving every second of it.
Thank you so much for that. Always great to learn about leaders in the ServiceNow space and how they got to where they are and what their path was, and whether it be through opportunity or through, real choice and focus. And regardless, it's always informative on how people can lean into areas of strength or interest. Yours being once you got the delivery side and customer success, that was a fit, and now here you are. So tell us all about Crossfuze, who you are, what you do, mission of the business, and what area you're playing in within the ServiceNow space.
Yeah, absolutely. So Crossfuze, we're an elite ServiceNow partner doing implementations and very recently a lot more steady state support style offerings, customers of all sizes, but primarily mid-market customers that are either getting into ServiceNow for the first time, so net new implementations, or have been on the platform for a number of years and are either expanding their offerings within the ServiceNow suite, or in some cases replatforming, going through different avenues and things like that. It's really, really cool at Crossfuze because we actually have two arms of our business. There's the ServiceNow side that I live in, but Crossfuze also has a Microsoft side of the house, which is very cool. And I think that gives us as a company a couple different perspectives for what we can do and different experts that we can kind of lean on depending on what our projects have entailed in it. And it's a really exciting place to be at the moment, for sure.
Indeed. You and I were talking off air about the excitement that's in the space, the opportunity, but a lot of the conversations that you're having with customers around what they think they need versus what they actually need. I'd love for you to help us share your view on that, what you're hearing. Let's unpack it, because you and I were thinking along the same lines. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the field, what your customers are asking for from you, and how you're advising them on a path to success when it comes to not just ServiceNow impact, but overall digital transformation strategy.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because everything from my perspective is a bit more, JP, as we were talking about, in the mud, because we partner so much in delivery with our sales counterparts, right? And oftentimes at the top level, when a customer has a vision for where they're trying to get to, they're only seeing the successful, this is what it's going to look like. But when you get into it from a delivery perspective, and certainly when you're trying to chart out a path from A to B in a project or perhaps a series of projects, you uncover so much along the way, right? I think a big thing that we're seeing right now is the vision is fantastic in the industry across the board. You go to any knowledge or any of the summit events, and there hasn't been any slowdown, dip, or even plateauing of what can we do with the platform, or what can we do if we all, were on one system that was truly a single pane of glass, and what would that world look like? Everybody has vision and great ideas, and the art of the possible has never been more exciting. But when you start to get into it and a customer commits, this is where we need to be, in 12 months' time, and you're kicking off a project, you very quickly identify how big those gaps are. And I think the example we were talking about, is really around data. How good is your data? How much do you trust what's in your environments today? Because in AI, for example, your ability to leverage all the cool stuff that we see on stage and all the cool stuff that we see in all the videos is really dependent on how much do you have today that you trust and that's accurate and secure and all those things. So when we get into the projects, we uncover that gap, right? And we're not trying to take away from where we're trying to go. We want everybody when we're cutting cake at go live to saying, yeah, we've accomplished all that stuff. But the lift to get there sometimes is a lot larger than what we initially expect, when we're kicking off a project.
Yeah, you're so right. And we hear this time and time again. AI, C-suites from mid-sized companies right the way up to large enterprise, they need to have an AI strategy for their board. And
Yeah.
there's big, bold, and beautiful possibilities, but fundamentally, the foundation level has to be set, and that is the data. And if that is not set, then a lot of these big, audacious projects fall short, as we both know. Are there any recent examples that you could share with us where you've had these conversations with a customer and you've had to address the difficult, but what's come out the other side of it has been really effective and it's building trust through stages? Because I know that's an important component for an implementation partner, which is help them see ROI and take it in stages. So what can you share with us about these conversations when it goes well?
Yeah, I think, the first thing we have to do is be honest, but honest in a way that is moving the needle forward, because there's so many times where, especially in the partner space, folks have been doing this for a while now, right? Like it's not as brand new as it was 10 years ago. At some point, there's experts on both sides, right? Experts on the customer's admin team and experts, obviously, in the partner space. And sometimes you have customers that have worked with 2 or 3 different partners and have different sets of lessons learned. So it's not just, go and have the discussion and say, Mr. or Miss Customer, sorry, you're so far off. And there's no way to get where we're trying to go. You're going to be over time. You're out of budget. That's not helping anybody. You have to be moving towards where they're trying to get to, but you have to do so in a way where it's very real, right? You can't just promise something overnight, get to go live, and all of a sudden, or UAT, and the testing is terrible. It's not hitting the mark. People are all over the place. So when we're having the conversations about what we need to do to get from where we're at to where we're trying to go, you have to be very transparent, and you have to suggest ways to get there. You can't just call out the problem without saying, there's a solution to it. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is certain things that people think they can get done in that first phase, really need to take a couple iterations before they get to where they're at. And we're seeing that more and more, especially around things that have heavy automation or things that, we are trying to use AI in different areas, just because, again, it goes back to the current state of what is in the environment and active today might have some gaps in it. So you have to narrow down the scope. You have to start with something that can be successful, understand why that thing is successful, and then replicate those things in the areas that might be lacking in terms of maturity of what made that first phase so successful. And when you're having those conversations, it's important to keep the excitement, right? You have to keep the vision going, but you just have to do it in a way where you're presenting win-wins for the customer, for their objectives, but also that are realistic and can be achieved from an implementation perspective.
Yeah, positive realism, keeping people focused on the medium term possibilities while the realities of the day-to-day. I like that. When you think of the demand by industry or module from the portfolio of organizations that come to Crossfuze, where are you guys seeing the demand? What's hot right now? And looking at the roadmap ahead, where are you guys expecting to be busy across 2026?
Yeah, that's a great question, JP. I think it feels like, with Crossfuze, we're not specialists in any one area. We've grown and have built very successful practices across all of the pillars within the umbrella, right? But I will say one thing that I'm seeing a lot more of come through is in the SecOps and integrated risk management space. Yeah. And I think the reason being for that, early on when I saw a lot of those projects come through and jumped in myself and got to learn more about that space, Yeah, the tool's doing great things. And yeah, those groups are traditionally a lot more reliant on spreadsheets and things
Mm.
that are a little bit harder to govern or reference back. And that's why they're trying to move to the platform where they can have, trusted data that's, appropriately logged, and you can recall and use it for all the audits and things like that long term to come. But I also think there's a big reason for a push in that space is because so many other groups are starting to use AI. And in order to
Yeah.
trust what's out there, you have to have governance and you have to understand your security processes and how
Hmm.
tight are they across your environment if you're going to start leveraging AI for all sorts of different use cases, right? So I think naturally that's a perfect storm for why a lot of customers are looking deeper into the SecOps portion of ServiceNow. Because if they can have confidence in the way that they're controlling their environment and
Yeah.
running their audits, they can set themselves up better for saying, yeah, we can go get that AI thing and trust that we're going to be as best protected as we can be going into that phase of wherever our company is going next.
Yeah. Such a good point. I want to switch directions slightly now and talk about what it's like to be part of the team at Crossfuze. Your role has evolved and grown over time. You're heavily involved in ensuring that the customer's needs are met, but part of how you do that is making sure you've got an established team on the back end who can deliver quality work. So I first want to start with the actual environment day to day, what the culture is like, why Crossfuze over some of the other great companies who are out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, JP. And I can kick myself because anytime someone asks this question, it's easy to be like, oh, the people, right?
Yeah,
And that's kind of a gimme answer in a lot of areas. But I think what's you know, truly unique about Crossfuze is the fact that we're still small enough where if there's an issue, you're getting all of our experts and brain trust together. I mean,
yeah,
still from the early days of Crossfuze, there were development huddles that happen on Friday afternoons where if you're stuck on something that you're trying to figure out as a technical architect or a senior technical consultant, or even just a junior developer, you can get on and you're going to see at any point on that call anyone from our more senior TAs all the way up through our senior vice president in Allison Shirey being a certified master architect. So
yeah,
people are still joining these calls. People are still talking about the how do you get something done. And that culture of leaning in and helping has bled across the entire organization. So like in my group, for example, if there's something that we're facing on a project, you're never alone as that engagement manager, or you're never alone as that client lead where you can't go, hey, how would you do this? And shoulder tap virtually in our case, but shoulder tap someone and say, what, man, how do we solve this? Right. And I know for myself, it doesn't matter your title, right? It doesn't
yeah.
matter, if you're Steve, our CEO, or if, you're Jonathan that just started, right? And that's not the case everywhere, is what
I
I've
love
learned.
it. Final question for me, David. As a follow-up to what you just touched on, look, you know this as well as anyone. One of the biggest bottlenecks for organizations to grow within ServiceNow is the supply and demand of quality resources. Okay,
Yeah.
the platform is in such huge demand. There's new modules and features coming out all the time. Most importantly, the customers, the users are getting benefit. They believe in it, they trust it, and they want to adopt it more and more, which means partners like Crossfuze are growing because of the demand. But it's always a challenge to find people to help you grow. So in a
100%.
hyper competitive market, when you look at the road ahead, you've touched on what a great environment Crossfuze is. So I want to ask you, it's a twofold question. One, where do you see the need for Crossfuze to add talent in the roadmap ahead? And if you were having a coffee, a beer, lunch with someone who you felt was a good fit for Crossfuze, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a great question, JP. And I think at the stage that we're in as an industry, right now. A lot of folks have a lot of friends, and these are people that it's not just, oh, I really like Bill, or, oh, I really like Sarah. It's no, we've worked together and we've done this. We've been on projects, right? So as the industry is more mature, it's even more important to understand as a reputation, where do you sit within there? And very fortunate to be at a partner that has a very good reputation and a long-standing, history of success. So there's certainly an element of that's what you're trying to sell someone on, where they're coming in. But I think the other piece that's more important now, than I think it ever has been is, truly how big is your outreach as a partner? Do you just do HR and that's your only thing? If so, that's great. But I think the runway for, folks that are very, very specialized is probably shorter than the runway for the partners who have a lot of different practices and practice leaders in that. And I think the number one thing I try and sell people on, outside of the fact that, we're great and the culture is great and it's fun to work here and there's tons of great benefits. If you look at the number of certified master architects that are, at Crossfuze for the size of who we are, that's a stat that is just, I think, hard to beat in the industry. So 200 ServiceNow professionals with 7 certified master architects and 2 more entering the program just about every single year is really, really rare. And when you have that many experts, it helps you be relevant and knowledgeable across all of the platform. And as ServiceNow continues to grow and, companies continue to pick 1 or 2 platforms as their true enterprise, solution platforms, that skill set is so critical. And I think, that puts us at Crossfuze in a bit of a differentiator in terms of a position than a lot of others. And if I was selling someone over a beer, that's definitely probably a point I'd hammer home.
David, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. Really appreciate you sharing your journey, your background, and how you found yourself in ServiceNow, and obviously your success in growing as the ecosystem has grown. But most importantly, a look behind the scenes of the amazing environment at Crossfuze, what you guys are doing for your customers, what you're seeing in the space, the demand, and most importantly, getting the balance right of keeping optimistic around what's possible, but the realities of day to day, and then the culture and environment. So it sounds like an amazing place to work. We wish you, the team, and everyone at Crossfuze the very best of luck in the year ahead, and look forward to having you back on the show again in the near future.
Amazing. Thanks, JP.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.